Today we're going to look at how to score the problem-solving sheets from this unit. So this will be applied to your own work throughout the unit, as well as in the final lesson when you will have to score your classmates' work on the problem that you design. So let's start off by, we are in our Moodle, and we are going to go down to the introduction section. And in the introduction section, you will see the rubric for problem-solving unit. The reason it is in the introduction section is that it is the same rubric for every single problem. So let's click that open, and you will see that the rubric is right here for you. And it's broken into 3 sections. It's broken into understand and plan, solve and answer, and explanation. And what this allows us to do is it allows you to earn points even if you get the wrong answer. Normally in math, it's either a right or wrong answer. With problem solving, it's not. It's more about the process and the understanding and how you can explain your work more than getting the correct answer. So you can actually get a significant amount of points on this and still have the problem wrong. But we will look at an example of that in just a little bit. So what I've done is I've taken the problem-solving rubric off the Moodle, and I've also taken an example of some student work so that we can look at them side by side. So we're going to start by looking in the understand and plan section. In order to get a 6 here, which is the highest amount you can get, you need to get 2 3s. So in order to get the first one, you need to display that you know what the question is that you need to answer. And to get the second 3, you need to come up with a plan that should lead to an efficient, successful solution. So let's take a look at our problem here. Cooper wants to buy a jump rope that costs $4, a board game that costs $20, and a playground ball that costs $7. He has saved $5 from his allowance, and his uncle gave him $22. How much more money does Cooper need to buy the jump rope, the game, and the ball? So as you can see in this student's work, in the box, you can see that they have a plan already worked out. Up here we see 22 plus 5. I would have liked to see it labeled, but it's not. And that would be the amount of money that he has. He has the $5 from his allowance and the 22. So she knows that there needs to be some addition here. Down on this bottom part, you can see that they've added up the total of how much it's going to cost him. So you see the jump rope is 4, 20 for board game, and 7 for the ball. So you can see that their plan is there. They know they have a certain plan that they're going to use in order to get to it. So this I would score as a 3 up here because it clearly displays they know what the question is to answer and that their plan would lead to a successful solution. So that would be a 6 total for the understanding and plan section. Now we move on to the solve and answer section. This section is worth 9 points of the total 24. So in our first section, it's all about how the work is organized. So work is organized and easy to follow, including labels and symbols where necessary. Over here, work can be followed with some guesswork, including some labels and symbols where necessary. Now, as I just mentioned, this student missing some labels about what things are. The student clearly labeled here the jump rope, the board game, and the ball, but didn't use a $sign for the amount of money. And then up here, they also did not say what this was. So they did it out, but did not mention what it was. Here, same thing. Now, I can assume that they know what they're talking about, but it's always best to include all of this. So I would probably give them a 2 on this, because there is some guesswork about what this is and what that is. Now, because I know the problem and I know the student, I know that they knew what they were doing, but it would be a 2. Okay? All math is accurate. Clearly, 22 plus 5 is 27, 4 plus 20 plus 7 is 31, and 31 minus 27 is 4. So all math is accurate here. If you got an answer that caused you to get part of the problem wrong, but most of it, it would be a 2. Or if the problem is completely wrong, but you knew what you were doing, then it would be a 1. For the last part of the solve and answer section, it is all about the correct answer. In this case, the student got the correct answer. So they would get a 3, for a total of an 8 for the solve and answer section. Now, this is where problem-solving rubrics come in handy, because you could have done all of the work, had a good plan, and it should lead to a successful solution, but still get the answer wrong. You would still get a 3 up here, you could still get a 3 in these sections, but you would get a 1 down here because you did not answer the problem correctly. Now, the whole thing with this, it's very important to show your work. In the past, students have just put down an answer, and that would automatically be a 0. So beginning without showing any work, you would end up with a 0 for this section, because I can't see your understanding if there is no work shown. Now we're going to move on to the last section, the explanation. This is probably the toughest section to grade. It's also the toughest section to do. So it's also probably the most important to show the teacher or the scorer of the problem that you know what you were doing. So let's look down in her explanation. She wrote, first you have to add the jump rope, board game, and ball cost because you want to see how much money he needs, which is $31. So right here they explained why you did it, which will come in key later. Then you have to find out how much money he has by adding $5 and 22 because he has $5 in his allowance and his uncle gave him $22. So again, explaining why you're taking those steps is really important. Then you have to subtract 31 from 27 because he needs $31, but he has $27. The answer is he needs $4 more. So here, clearly in this explanation, the student explained the steps she took and why she took them. So let's come over to our rubric. So in the first one, clearly explained how the problem was solved. Clearly goes through the steps that they took, so that would be a 3. Used correct math vocabulary. This would be words that help us show what operation they're using, like adding, and other words like subtracting, okay, and dollars. So they aren't just saying you're going to subtract 31 plus minus 27 and you end up with 4. They're using the math words like dollars, subtracting, adding in order to explain the problem. Okay, so this one would be a 3. Some problems don't really allow themselves to use that correct math vocabulary. And again, if they aren't doing an explanation, they end up with a 0 in this section. So if you follow the steps of this, it is pretty simple. Let's go down to the last one. Explained important steps and why they were used. Explained some important steps and why they were used. Could not explain why the steps were used. Most often when I'm grading these for my students, this is what ends up coming up. Students can explain really easily what steps they took to solve a problem, but when asked why, that's when they seem to stumble. However, in this case, the student clearly explains why they took those steps. For example, first you have to add the jump rope, the board game, and the ball cost because you want to see how much money he needs, which is $31. So explaining what the purpose of it is there. So this student, I would give a 3 for explaining all of the steps throughout the explanation for that. So that would be a 9. So then you would just add up your columns and you would end up with a 23 out of 24 on your rubric. So now that we have our score of 23 out of 24, we're going to go down to this comment section. And this section is very useful to help to explain to the problem solver why they got the score they did. So I always try to start with a positive comment, such as great explanation of their work, and then I would also, if they didn't get a 3 in any of these areas, give them some guidance, some feedback about why they didn't. So up here in the 2, in the second section, where they got the 2 out of 3, I would explain, please remember to label all your work, just to give them the clue to go back and make sure those things are labeled next time, because that is the only thing that was wrong in this problem. Now, as you can see, it takes a while to do these problem-solving rubrics, but as you use more and more of them, you become more familiar with them. So hopefully, when you are solving your own problem before you submit it, you take a look at this rubric and you grade yourself and see what you would give yourself on it. And if you think you can do better, then please take the time, do it better and get a better grade on it. So thank you for watching.